I do have it on record actually, but I'm not sure. I'm not positive that it's the highest. Okay, so when we talk about poker and business, we're talking both primarily skill games, but both have a bit of luck involved. And earning money, of course, is the primary goal. Although in this course, we've learned about other important aspects as well socially. So I'm going to talk about 5 important lessons. So poker is a game of incomplete information because you don't know what cards your opponent holds. So you have to kind of use what you have to think about how to decide what you think your opponent has. And it's the same in business. You don't know exactly what your customers want. You don't know exactly what your competitors are going to do, but you have to use the information that you have. So in poker, a common misconception is that you just assume that your opponent has one specific hand. Like you assume he has jacks, or you assume he has queens. But actually, good poker players will assume that their opponent has some range of hands. So maybe they have ace-10 through ace-king, or 10s or better, something like that. So you usually can't narrow it down so specifically, but you can give them a range. And after you've made your decisions, it's good to go back over them and see and kind of adapt to new situations. Okay, so, and also, we'll talk about database thinking. So in business, we know that it's important to use all the data sources that you can. And in poker, it's the same. I'll show you on the next slides all the data that you can pick up from the hands that saved your computer. One important concept is thinking in expectations. So say you're facing a bet in poker, you generally think about what are the odds not what are the odds that I'll win this hand, but if I'm getting 5-to-1 odds to call a bet, am I winning at least 1 out of 6 times? So it's kind of the same in business, where when you're thinking about investing in a new project or something like that, you're not thinking, is this going to be good or bad? You actually need to think about it in terms of expectation. So this is an example. Every hand of poker you play, you can save to your hard drive. And so today's topic was performance measurement. So here you can basically look at any stat you want on yourself or on your opponents. So one example would be, say, you want to see if I raise in a certain situation, how often do my opponents fold? And you can see over time what percentage they're folding, what percentage they're calling, and things like that. So and then you can change your strategy based on that. Here you can see, even when you're playing, you can have all these stats show up right next to these are all your opponents. You can have all these stats that you define for yourself show up next to them. So you can see what percentage of hands they're playing, what percentage of hands they're raising, and all these kinds of things. So then if someone who plays a lot of hands enters the pot, you know his strength is generally not as strong as someone who plays fewer hands. Okay. Next we'll talk about staying under control. A lot of poker players, if something bad happens, if they lose a big hand by getting unlucky, they kind of go crazy, and that's called tilt in poker. And we know that also in business, if something goes wrong, or if your business is possibly not working, we've learned about tactics like pivoting, or just letting go of the business completely, not necessarily sticking with it if it's not working. And also, being results oriented is kind of when if you say you bet in poker and you're trying to bluff and your opponent calls, that doesn't necessarily mean that you made a bad decision. It just means that you possibly got unlucky that time. So it's important to think about things in the big picture, not just the results of one specific action. Okay, so choosing your market. In business, we want to generally enter a market that's not so crowded, it's generally kind of easier to get into. And that's the same in poker. When you're looking to join a table, you never want to join a table with all good players. It's very competitive. You want to join a table with bad players. And that's actually, it sounds basic, that's actually probably the easiest way to make money in poker. Probably where most of my profits came from. And I think the parallel in business is that you can, after you enter a market, it's not only that you join a table with bad players, you specifically target them and try to beat them. So you can see in business also. Okay. Risk management. So in poker, there's this kind of misconception that when you watch poker on TV, all the important pots are the big ones. But in reality, it's kind of a constant and slow buildup, and we see that kind of with the MVP concept, that you don't want to just start this massive business from the beginning. You want to kind of slowly develop it and kind of iterate as it goes. And so with risk management, it's you don't want to be overly cautious. You don't want to be overly risky, which is also important in business. And the difference in poker is that you kind of can define your own risk measure, whereas in business you have kind of shareholders and investors and other people to worry about. So we have some extra time, so I can take questions. These are kind of questions that all professional poker players get that have become a bit, you could say annoying because you keep hearing them over and over, but I'm happy to answer any if anybody's interested.
What kind of poker do you play?
I played Texas Hold'em, no limit, mostly.
I think it relates to one of the questions. Where is the money?
Where's the money? Is that rhetorical or is that?
Well, it's okay.
Oh.
I really want to say it's a great presentation. I really loved your presentation. You made excellent equivalents to business situation from the poker, and I think that each one of us should really adopt some game. I mean, you should be playing not just your profession or something, because any game that you play, you can learn so much and bring so much to your profession, to your career. And this is a great example that you just showed equivalence, and then I think because you understand the game, I think you better understand what's going on in the class, because you always draw the equivalent. And I told everybody, if you start with something that you are familiar, or you want to explain to somebody, and you start with what they are familiar with, and you go and you build from there, it's much more powerful. They remember, you remember. So I really love your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Can you answer